Welcome to Men's Call, where every man has a call by God that, if fulfilled, will change the world. Therefore, we go after the answers to the questions about our call on this earth. Hey guys, I know it's been about a month and a half to 2 months that I've been away, and all I can say to that is sometimes our focus has changed. I know for me, I've definitely been really focused on my health, and then there's also been many other things going on. But I'm back now, and I'm looking forward to getting the flow going again. But just to get started, what I wanted to do was post what I was going to post last, which was going to be a Father's Day special. I was blessed to do a Father's Day special with my father and my father-in-law's family of men on a Father's Day special with Raleigh North Christian Center. So I'm going to play back this message that we had together, talking about being fathers, also talking about being black fathers, also talking about the things that we need to do in raising our children, and also what we need to do in loving our spouses, our wives. So if you have the time and you haven't heard this message already, go ahead and take a listen. My wife is actually the moderator as well, and I thank God for that too. So hope you enjoy.
All right, happy Father's Day. We are so excited. Welcome to Raleigh North Christian Center, and part of our heart to you is to celebrate you, but especially on Father's Day, we want to celebrate fathers, and this session is all about celebrating Black fathers, our leadership and our legacy through the leaders in our own families and in our community. I'm so excited today because we are in a room filled with great men of valor, great men of wisdom, and because of them, often we are. So today, along with Dr. Chapman, who is the founder and the senior pastor here at Raleigh North Christian Center, and my dad, we are so honored to also have Dr. Chapman's dad, my grandpa Wesley Chapman, and also we are so thrilled to have my father-in-law, my father-in-love, Reverend Jesse Donald Parker, as well as my husband, Jesse Parker, and Jeff, my brother, Jeffrey Chapman Jr. So we wanted to show multi-generational leadership and hear from their heart as far as what they've learned growing up and the lessons that they can share as men, as leaders, as fathers for you and your family. So join me in welcoming our guest today. So glad to have you.
Great to be here.
Awesome. So we wanted to first open up on why this conversation is important. We believe, especially now in what I call the social justice revolution era, it's important to be reminded of the leadership in our own bloodline and in our community. We wanted to really amplify the history of leadership and legacy that we have, our resiliency, our ability to build and rebuild again, and our ability to instill values that are lasting. And so today we wanted to hear from the heart of these men, and we wanted to be able to share that so that you can be blessed in your own home, in your own family, and that it can even elevate your mindset or even inspire you in different areas. Just hearing from the way they grew up and what they've made a point of doing differently or the same in their own leadership as a man and father. All right, gentlemen, so this is now all about you, and so we're so grateful to be here with you. We want to hear from you. When you reflect on your growing up, each of you represent different generations. I'd love to know in your mind, what are qualities that make a man a leader and a good father? Let's start with Dr. Jeffrey Chapman.
You said a leader and a great father?
Yes.
Well, I think first of all, we need to understand what leadership is. And leadership is really to motivate a group of people towards a common goal. And so that's what a leader is supposed to do. So as a father, that is what my responsibility is to my family, is to lead them and to achieve a common goal. And the father sets the vision for the house. And so it's important for him to know what the vision is so that he can accomplish it and articulate that to every family member.
Love it, love it. Okay, who would like to share next? Feel free to just jump in.
Well, the father, probably the oldest father that is here, I agree with everything that my son just said. A leadership is all that and then more. A leader has to be always, he's got to be a follower before he becomes a leader.
I love that.
If you can't follow, you can't lead. You can't always be out front as a drum major telling everybody else what to do.
That's good.
You got to be willing to do some of it yourself. A leader is all of that.
I love that.
You know?
Well said. Anyone else?
Yeah, my take on leadership is I always look at it kind of like I love gardening. So I look at it as in a child, as pertaining to children, it's like cultivating. You know, it's like planting that crop. And, you know, and when you're planting a crop, you always have to have distance from each plant. I don't know how many children you got, but each one of them going to need their own space. And in doing that, when you're cultivating, one may need something that the other one don't need, you know. And then the other one may need that something that the other one needs, you know. So, but being a leader, it starts, like Wesley said, you got to be a follower before you can be a leader. And I had a great follower from my father, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, if we want to talk about leadership, of course, I can't speak on fatherhood, but I can speak on being a leader. One of the things that really makes a good leader, in my opinion, is one, like they said, being able to follow, take instruction. In the business field, in the corporate world, I think leadership is understanding the room, understanding when to talk, when to speak, understanding different personalities, how to flow with each individual person. And from my experience, that really helps. It's like a coach coaching a football team. There's some players you can be very hard on. There's some players you got to be a little more soft with because people take direction differently.
Yeah.
And a good leader recognizes that when they enter a room, they know when to speak, they know when to hush, they know when to step up. You know, sometimes you have to be assertive. Sometimes you have to kind of fall back. I think there's a lot of different qualities when it comes to the leadership. And one thing, you got to be humble. People respect humility. From my experience, that goes a long way. Also be authentic. When you're authentic, people can be authentic right back with you. If you're genuine, they'll pick up on that vibe and they'll flow with that same energy. So I think being a leader, you know, you have to have a following too. People have to be following you. They have to respect you. You have to be a great decision maker. Leadership is really all about decisions. It's all about decisions you make. And it really comes down to, you know, who you're around, because that impacts leadership. You know, that impacts decisions you want to make. And so I think leadership is a full-scale thing, but you have to approach it in different layers and different situations. And from my experience, I get the respect from that standpoint because I'm very understanding. I'm very personable. You're going to see my face. You know, I always tell people, you're going to know what I'm thinking just by looking at my face. I have a horrible poker face. But people, I think, just respect me because I come from a genuine place. I have a great background. And I think that's really a lot of qualities that leadership really contains.
I love it.
I guess if we're all going around, leadership for me is being honest, you know, and learning as you go. I know some of you guys probably think, you know, you read the books and you're going to be a perfect father, but, you know, you're going to be who God called you to be. So you just need to learn as you go and be honest. The kids are going to watch and do everything that you do. So I see some of the mistakes I made early on, and my son, I had to change some of that with my daughter so she didn't have that same attitude, you know. So you just learn along the way, and you make sure that you improve every day.
I love it. I love it. And I think also for our audience, if you all are open to it, if you could just share a little bit about who you are, where you were born, you know, some things that you're grateful for, you're growing up, just so we can have a little bit of an understanding of a little bit of your background and so that we can connect to what brought you here today. So how about we start with Grandpa Wesley?
Well, I was born in 1942, years back. I was raised on a farm, mostly raised by my grandfather. My mother, she passed away when I was a young kid, 7 years old, I believe it was. I think I got that right. My mother was, I don't know, I thought she was the greatest woman there was in the world, even at that age. She gave me everything I needed and everything I wanted, just about it. I always had more than everybody else at Christmas time. She worked on the base. That was kind of one of the best jobs there was in Onslow County, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. She kept us, me and my brother, always looking neatly. She worked as a laundry on the base. Worked at the laundry, and the clothes that we wore were starched so heavily they could stand by themselves when you took them off. And we had to wear that to school, I remember, and they were just scratchy, just eat you up. Nobody in school had clothes like we did, but my brother died soon after that. And it seemed like me and my brother went downhill fast. Not only that, a year later, my grandmother died. That left my brother, myself, my father. Not my father, my grandfather. He was mom. He was the teacher. He was dad. He was everything. Learned a lot from the old man. I don't know, he was kind of firm. Worked us hard. Having a good time was, to him, was holding the mule in the yard, letting him feast. And going to church. He wanted you to go to church. We can participate in church. After church, it was back to the mule, holding him in the yard. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this in public, but I got to say it. I got to say it because it comes in, it's very important. As a young person, I thought I hated my grandfather. That stayed with me for a while. But as I grew older, I saw where he was molding me. Wow. He was making me a survivor. Cooking, ironing, taking care of yourself. Today I can do all that. I've done all that with him, with all the rest of my kids that I raised. I think he's the greatest person that ever lived. Wow. Because he taught me to survive. Wow. And that means a lot, to be able to survive. Yes. He taught me how to be not, I wouldn't say I was a Christian, but he taught me how to believe in God. That was another good trait I like.
That's very good.
But I don't know, I really appreciate him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Grandpa. All right, let's go to Reverend Jesse Parker, and then we'll come to my father.
So she's going by age.
Yes, I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1954, and I'm really honored to be here today. Wesley touched my heart over that, man, because we kind of come through the same era, somewhat. But one of the most important rules that my father had was to respect women. If you didn't respect women, wherever you were at, now you didn't have to be in his house, wherever you were at, you had to respect women. You know, a lot of, in my era, it wasn't a lot of respect because a lot of men treated women pretty bad in our neighborhood, you know. So that stood out, you know. That was paramount for me, for him, you know. We were going to do that. And my father, when he was 23 years old, he had a stroke, a sunstroke. He was a sharecropper. And he was out in the tobacco field priming, and he had a stroke. So I wasn't born until 1954. He had the stroke in 51. So that means, you know, he was still active and everything, you know. And by him having that stroke, it made him, it kicked in extra senses. It's like he had a sixth sense, you know. He could plow a mule with one hand. He was paralyzed on his left side. He could plow a mule with that. He taught us how to bait a hook with one hand. He taught me how to tie my shoes with one hand.
Wow.
So you see, the skills, God always prepares you for things, you know. But those skills that I've learned from him are how to treat people, how to be a people person. It's good to be a people person now. When you No, people just don't like you that much,
Right.
you know. But when you can be elevated to have a smile and be kind. And when my father passed, it was a scripture. He said, he always reminded me, so as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
He told me that the day before he died. He kept telling me that. He told us 3 sons. Every day, one of us got a piece of that, you know. That's all I got.
I love that. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Great.
All right, Dad.
Well, my name is Jeffrey Chapman, Sr. I was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina in 1962. And now I understand why my dad treated me the way he treated me by hearing this story for the first time like this. I'm like, wow, I get it now. But I can say on the back end, I appreciate it so much more now than I did then. Didn't understand all of the pieces that was going into it. I just thought, man, he was a hard man when it came down to certain things. And so I can say now that those traits that he taught me growing up, you know, now really, really have shaped me into who I am. And one of the things I kind of wrote down this morning, and you may have asked this question, but very quickly, is that one of the things I have learned from him, you know, growing up, one of the greatest things I can remember is that he instilled education into me, and I hated it. I mean, I hated school all the way to 12th grade. Actually, I just couldn't take it. But looking back now, I understand that what he taught me was great study habits, things that I use today. I would not be able to bring to fruition my messages and my teachings and my sermons if I didn't have those kind of study habits.
Wow.
And so I can see now how his grandfather taught him and instructed him. There were some ways that he did with me and my brother. And so I'm very appreciative because there again, there's a lot of great qualities. And I have shared this with him before that I could not be who I am without his hand being in my life the way it was. And he was always there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Jeff, you want to share?
Sure. My name is Jeffrey Chapman Jr. This is my pops right here, Dr. Chapman. So I was born in Sierra Vista, Arizona, 1987. Of course, I was born there because my dad was in the military. And I was there for, 3 or 4 years, and then we moved to North Carolina. So I basically grew up here in the state of North Carolina in Raleigh. And I love Raleigh. I know a lot of people grow up here like, oh, it's nothing. I love it. It fits my personality so well. It's funny. It's so funny because as I'm hearing everybody, now I'm learning the psychology behind a lot of things. Because I realized growing up, my dad wasn't really that hard on me like that. And I think that's because his dad was hard on him like that. So I think it had the opposite effect. He's like, oh, my dad was always on me. So it had pros and it had cons where I didn't feel forced to do a lot of things, you know. But at the same time, I think I really learned a lot through observing him and listening to him. Always, so I'm just telling him what to do. I was always obedient. I was never a troublemaker. I was a little slow, but I wasn't a troublemaker. You know, I really had a great childhood. What I love the most about my dad is he loves his family. He takes pride in taking care of his family. That comes, I mean, after God, that comes second. You know, he loves his wife. He loves his children. I have 2 other siblings. He treats us equally but different, based on different personalities. And so I think he probably was the most patient with me. I always joke, he said, I ain't know if you was gonna survive. Speaking of survival, he said, I ain't know if you was gonna survive. He said, I thought I was gonna take care of you for a long time. I always say that. And so I was more of a late bloomer, but a lot of stuff that I watched growing up and saw what he did was instilled in me, and it really came out. Number 1 was loving his family. Number 2, he's always been very consistent. Everything he's done, he's been very disciplined. He's been by the book. And so I really try to take those traits that I learned at an early age and what I'm doing now with running the ministry. Another thing is, it seemed like he was Mr. Everything because he was handy.
Yep.
He can build things. He can fix things. He was in technology. He's preaching. So, I mean, this is like my ultimate superhero growing up. Like, this man can do anything. So, well, one, I'm blessed because I actually had a father that was in my life. That's one of the things I really enjoy and I really thank God for. And so that was number 1. So now a lot of things that he did growing up, because he was very clean, like no dust on the blinds, no shoes on the floor. I treat the ministry that way. I'm very particular because that was instilled in me, and that trickled down. So if I see something out of place, I'm like, move that, get that, that don't look right. That's because that's how I was brought up. And I thank God he was strict in that way, because it really made me run this ministry very well. He created that foundation for me to operate the way I'm operating today, and I really truly enjoy it. I always looked up to him. A guy asked me not too long ago, he was trying to work with his son. He said, at what age does your dad start being cool to you? Because I'm trying to make my son, I was like, from day one. I never thought my dad was goofy. If anything, I was scared of him growing up. It's funny, I used to tell people, I was so intimidated. I had like the fear of God. You know how you have the fear of God? I had the fear of Dr. Chapman. Growing up, I used to be so scared of, I used to talk to him behind his back like this. I would never talk to his family like, hey, Dad, can I get a, he's like, man, get in front of me, man. I was so shy and intimidated, because he just had this aura about him of respect, and I didn't want to, let him down in any way. Still to this day, it's good that we're older now, and, we're more friendly. I mean, we're always friendly, but we're more like friends than father and son. But back then, and I was just like very, kind of standoffish, like respect. And I think that's why I'm so close to my mom, because she's so personal. My dad was like stern. I'm like, is he happy? Is he sad? But that really helped mold me today. I just really like that foundation he put in me, and that respect factor. And anything he tells me to do, even to this day, I'll do it without a hesitation. There's no pushback. There's no talk back, because he really instilled that love. I know he cares. I know he loves for us. I know he's always going to provide for us, or always was a provider, and he has our back. So I really love him, and that's really why I'm the guy I am today, is based off his leadership.
I love it. Love it.
Awesome.
All right, babe.
Well,
Jesse?
I'm Jesse Parker Jr., born in Burlington, North Carolina. And, when I came up, my dad was a very loving kind of person. He was always going to hug somebody. If he saw you across the way, he wasn't going to come up and grab your arm. He's going to yell all the way across the way, get your attention, and then come over there and talk to you, Very loving guy. And I learned from him compassion, He'll cry in a heartbeat. You'll probably see him cry today.
Trying to make me cry.
And, so I got that from him, and it makes a lot of sense, because he was talking about my grandfather, Joseph, who I never met. But, just some of the things he said. My dad would speak life to me, and he would tell me things that I was going to do that he hadn't done yet, and we'll probably get into that. And, that was just a blessing to me, that he would speak life like that. So I always make it a point to speak life to my son and my daughter the same way that it was spoken to me, So I just love to do things with my father, very hands-on. He's a very hands-on person. So I knew if I wanted to spend time with him, I needed to be out there with him hands-on. So that's what I would do, whether he was working on the truck. You remember that Ford? And he was working on that Ford. We were doing all kinds of stuff. I'm not doing none of it today, thank God. But growing up, we was always doing something, plowing in the field. He had me plowing the field and everything else. But that was all hard work, and I didn't think about it, but it was back-breaking hard work. When I came back from college, I realized how hard that work was when I came back and tried to do it. But it all strengthened me and made me tough, And I think one thing that's been coming up a lot lately socially as African-American men is that, we have to be tough, And I think it makes sense that when he raised me to be tough, and it really helped me in the area that we grew up in, where there was a lot of racism, So.
Very good. Thank you.
I know I'm kind of getting away from the question, but one thing I do appreciate my dad as well is his style. And it's funny that Grandpa Wesley was talking about how his mom had everything starched. And nobody dressed like them. Now I'm seeing the psychology behind why he dressed the way he dressed. And that kind of influenced me. We're, very, can't say showy people. We like to, like look good and fashionable and things of that nature. So I see how that is trickled down from generation to generation. And now I see kind of what the foundation and the birth and the evolution of how it started. And I really like, okay, now it makes sense. That's another thing I always appreciate. I'm like, yeah, that's what my dad's cool. Black James Bond.
All right. So now my next question is, what lessons about manhood have you passed down to your children, or are you hoping to pass down to your children? that you're very proud of and that you think matter generationally? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Love, understanding, kindness, and honesty. Those will work for a child. If you teach those, if you pass it on down from generation to generation, and hard work. I don't care if it's in the college scene, in the book, or outside, whatever. You got to work for what you do, and earn it. Earn what you get. Like Jesse, he when he was coming up, I drove him hard. I drove him so hard until he made sure he wanted to get a college education. When it came to plowing and doing, sure enough, he was out there doing it. And he told me one day, he said, "I'll never do this once I get 18." He said, "I want to do this again." I don't think he probably have, but he was instilled to work hard. So that's what I believe.
Awesome. All right, Dad, how about you?
One of the things I wanted to pass down to my son or all my children was take responsibility. Own up to whatever you're doing and make sure that you're not passing the buck. Make sure you're not putting it on other people. But, if it's your responsibility, take that responsibility. And, and I feel that, as far as a man, finding something and fulfilling it, being that example. So that's what I see. One of the things I would like to pass down and have passed down to my kids.
Awesome. Grandpa Wesley?
Well, at my age, one thing that you said that I would like to pass down, if I ain't already done it, it's too late. Pass it down now. But leadership.
Leadership.
Team building, very, very, very important. It's not only just team building on a job, it's team building in the family. It's team building at church.
Yeah.
Everywhere you involve in other people, it's got to be about team building. You all are starting a new project right now, right down the street. He can't do it alone.
Yeah.
He's got to have a team to do it with. Always believed in team building. As I was coming along when I was working, I pushed that into all my teams. You got to be a team builder. We can't make it alone.
Right.
If we go at it alone, we're going to fail. Team building is one of the most important things that you can do on this earth. You can't live by yourself. It takes a team
That's really good.
to do it.
Just to expound on that a little bit, to you, what is team building? How can you do that? Like, what does it look like to team build?
Team building, it's not that you're always out in the front leading everybody. You got to make everybody feel important on that team. Everybody's got a major role in that team to play. It's not about one individual. Team building is just covers so much.
Yeah.
I can remember when I was working in New Bern, starting there, I pushed in these people that I used to leave in charge about you got to have team building experience for these people to follow you. You can't just go out there and demand stuff from them.
That's good.
You got to kind of finesse it out of them. You can't always be right,
Right. That's good.
and they be wrong. You got to bring all. All that in together.
I love love that.
all that in together.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it's just like a football team. Just like a football team. You can't that guy back there running the ball. If you don't have those people up in front with him doing their assignments, he's lost. But he's gonna get killed. Yeah.
True.
But I truly believe in team building
I love that.
and the family
That's good.
and the church and the community,
Love that.
mostly everywhere. Team building.
Thanks for sharing that. Jesse, what about you?
Manhood, I think they all said it. But if I had to say something, I would say confidence. You know, that's something that I want to make sure that I instill in my son and my daughter, who already has a lot of confidence. Is confidence, you know, to respect others, but also respect yourself, you know, because God has given them gifts that are going to help them to be the great men and women of God that they're going to be. And I think that's been a benefit as well, because my dad and his dad both love the Lord, and I got to see it at an earlier age. It helped me to raise my children with God. You know, my dad, you know, he was learning as we went. But with my kids, thankfully, I was saved before I had them. So, you know, that allowed me to just see the Word of God and use that to instill that into my children. So if you have that opportunity, do that, because there's a difference between being a man and being a man of God. You know, and when you can bring and you can instill in them what God has instilled in you, then, you know, you're creating generational blessings. And that's really what I want to see in my family, irregardless if it's a man or a woman. In my children and my children's children is generational blessings from eating and feasting on the Word, you know? Yep.
Awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Difference between being a man and a man of God. I love that.
That's a good line.
Jeff?
So one thing I would hope to instill in the next generation and my kids will be, one, be true to who you are. I think one of the things, and I'm judging a lot of things based off how I was raised and how I thought of myself growing up. And be genuine to who you are. So be yourself. Don't try to be like somebody else. You can use people as a guideline on how to treat individuals and things of that nature. But for example, I used to be, in my early age, try to be just like my dad, everything. I was like, I got to go to the military. He was in the military. You know what I mean? I was like, you ain't a man, you can go to the military. You know, that was my mindset. I was like, I got to do literally everything like him. But in doing that, I didn't really know myself. So I was trying to be like somebody I really wasn't. There was traits I was like, but, you know, as a whole, I had to really find myself and be okay with who I am, you know, in different areas, whether it's being black, whether it's being, you know, more on the quiet end, more introverted. I didn't know what an introvert was until I was 18. So I was, for 18 years, I was trying to figure out, why do I like being by myself? Why am I such a loner? I thought something was literally wrong with me until I read a book and felt like, oh, okay, this is a normal thing, you know? And so why, you know, when it's a lot of crowds, I'm more, you know, low key, and it's individual, I talk more. So learning about yourself, be genuine to who you are and loving how God made you. No matter how that is, just be real. Yes. I think another thing I like to instill is make good decisions. You're not gonna make all the right decisions. Learn from your mistake, learn from others' mistakes. And, you know, to me, life is all about the decisions you make. You know, that's really what it comes down to. Learn to trust God and let Him guide you, and know everything. It's a faith move, but trust Him. I believe God bless pure intentions. So if you're trying to do your best, I believe He blesses that. And so when you make great decisions and really try to instill that, I think, in your kids, I think that will help. And I think also love your family. Love yourself, treat others how you want to be treated, respect others, be assertive when you need to be assertive, be humble when you need to be humble. And so these are some of the basic characteristics I would like to instill in that next generation and my kids, so they can learn to enjoy themselves for who they are and make the best decisions they can make.
Awesome. All the life lessons you need in fatherhood and life were just right here, gold. That was so good. Thank you for sharing that.
Shannon,
Yes, sir.
I want to share one more thing.
Sure.
And I notice where we're at right now in our country. This means a lot because I've seen it work through my son. You gotta teach against racism. With Jesse, I had an opportunity to do that because where we live at, 4% of the school, 4% of the school that he attended were black. And I instilled in Jesse, I said, you've got to get along And you've got to accept these people as who for what they are and not for what they may be. So with that said, Jesse was a school president and only 4% of the population were black.
Yes.
So I know he learned that lesson. You need you need everybody around you to make it work for you in society.
That's good.
This is not a black society. This is the United States of a melting pot. So I taught that. And I got to see it work through him. And I'm hoping he push it on with JJ and Eden and so on. You know.
I love that. That's powerful. That's really good. And I know in Jesse's life that he had to withstand racism really young, at 4 years old, you know, call the N-word and having to deal with teachers who, you know, would try to block him from opportunities and access, even though he had honors grades. And what I do appreciate about you and Daphne is that you fought for your children, but they were tough enough to know they could go to you and make things right. And even though he had to withstand all that, he has a loving heart. You know, Jesse truly has a loving heart for all people. Of course, we care about our community, but he does have a heart for all people, and I appreciate that from you. So that's awesome.
Well, that's real too, because you know, growing up, we went to predominantly white schools, and I think if it wasn't for the love I got at home, I think it would have affected me worse at a younger age.
Yeah.
I had that foundation at home, so even though I was picked on for being black, thinking I was dumb because I was black, thinking I was ugly because I was black, I got so much love at home, it counteracted that
That's awesome.
type of thing. And so I think that's why fathers are so important, because the influence you have in your kids goes beyond the house. Once you step out in the real world in those doors, you know, people are going through so many different things, have so many different personalities. You're going to be, you know, attacked every which way. And going to a predominantly white school, that was something I had to deal with. I think it was myself, and I think it was a girl. It was the only black person, black people in the classroom. And so that was a battle growing up mentally, especially when you're young. When you're young, your mind's not that developed to know how to deal with that. So I commend you, Mr. Parker, you know, for, you know, teaching your son how to deal with other races, because that's so important, especially now. And so I can see the effect, both positive and negative, that will have on a kid. But having that foundation at home will help you go a long way. And if you have good parents and they speak in life and you say you can do all things through Christ, which strengthens you, you know, I love you and I'm providing for you. And we've got a great example here, and you got great siblings. I think that family household, you know, really holds weight. And so I do thank God for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the things I just kind of want to hone in on is, and anyone can answer this question, but was there anything that you felt that you had to navigate growing up that you believe made you better? So if there was hardship or a challenge that you had to go through, and it wasn't what you wanted, didn't seem fair, but was there anything that you've had to navigate that you think, now looking back, you believe has made you better?
Yes. There's a plenty. Where should I start? Yeah. Yeah. I could start right at home. Right at home with as I thought it was a hardship with my grandfather coming through him. That's just like going to the wall. I've never been to the wall. But if you can survive him, you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it. And not only that, when I went to school, went off to A&T, I thought after I came out, my aunt sent me to A&T. My Aunt Gert paid for me. But after 2 years, she said, I can't afford it no more. I couldn't understand that. That was a hardship. That's one time a man cried because he couldn't go back to school. I didn't finish. I learned a lot while I was there, but that was a hardship for me, knowing that I wouldn't be able to go back. After this young man was born, and I had got out and got a job, went to work, I got a letter from A&T said, you can come back. I had done well enough in school that we can finance you. but I chose at that time not to, because he was born and another one was coming. Somebody's got to take care of this family. And that was me and his mother. He's going to have to do that. He's going to have to raise them. But that was kind of a downer then, knowing that I couldn't go back. After going to work, another downer was being told on that job that, and I know I was qualified to do other than what I was brought in there to do, that you can only clean the floors and clean the bathrooms. After asking, could I do some of these technical jobs, he said the world is not ready for you to do that yet, neither is this company.
Wow.
But the man that spoke that to me, he also said, there's going to be a time coming when you will be able to do that. And I'll be backing you. So man was true to his word. He did. He pushed for me to be the first black to be a technician person with Carolina Telephone. And then that's when the ball started to roll, and it was back in school again. And they kept me in school so much, then I tell you what, I just, what did I ask for? What did I ask for? You work 3 months and you go. Jeffrey, remember when I was gone so much? And those were some of the toughest schools I ever went to. Bam, 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 bam. I can remember one of the first schools I went for central office. It took 1 week, one whole week, for to pick up that telephone and you hear dial tone. And they push 8 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 8 hours a day.
Wow.
That was tough. Am I gonna make it again? But by the grace of God, I did. And from then on, I don't know, somebody saw something into me and they just keep pushing. You can go further, you can go further, you can go further. But I had some weak points too. I saw where that education that I didn't get helped me back a little bit. Even though Mr. Dorman, one of my mentors, he said, Wesley, you can be president of this company if you learn to put it on paper as well as you can tell it to us. And I couldn't do that. We didn't have the computer then. All you had was a dictionary sitting up there that you had to go to. That was our computer. But the rest of it, you had to come from there. But I don't know. I think I done well. I done well, I thought, for what I had. Went a long ways to be a division manager with the company before I came out. Within those 4 to 6 years. But there were some bright spots along the way too, Steph. A whole lot of bright spots. And you appreciate it too. But I know somebody else want to say something. I back down a little bit.
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of the exact opposite of what experiences, and I know things were there during my upbringing. But I saw very little personally. If it was there, it was something that, you know, I inadvertently may have seen, but for the most part. So the question basically is, you know, what pushed me? What pushed me to be who I am today? It was not seeing racism as what it was as growing up. So I was kind of shielded some way, somehow, from all of that. So I looked at myself, I can do anything I want to do. I looked at myself that there is no barriers. There was no teacher that ever told me that I couldn't. The personality that I had, they just loved, and I wasn't an outgoing person, but I was a very studious kind of person. So I would have people would come up to me, as far as the teachers would, you know, say something or instill something in me that I could go further. I think part of my, let's say, challenge was that I could go as high as I wanted to. I just did just enough. And that was the exact opposite. I just did just enough just to get by. Although I knew I was smart enough, I just didn't want the pushing and the constant challenging in me to go into something deeper and to better. I didn't get that quality until I was grown. And then I saw the importance of it. But without me seeing the harsh racism, I had no barriers. And so when I even raised you all, you know that that was never something that we talked about on the way that maybe traditional black family would have talked about, because I didn't see it that way. Now, mind you, I knew it was there.
Right.
But I just had the favor of God all my life, did not know it, that God just kind of moved me over here so that I didn't have to deal with it like other people had to deal with it. So I saw life from a different lens. And today I still see it from a different lens.
That's good.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share?
Give me the question again.
So basically, what made you who you are, and do you attribute that to anything you had to overcome?
Right. What made, I grew up in poverty, and I didn't even realize it. In other words, poverty did not define who I was going to be.
Good.
My mother and father, they were very poor, but I didn't realize I came from a poor family till I joined the Navy.
Wow.
And the guy in the Navy told me, you come from the lower rate. And with the taxes, it was a lower, something like that. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. I said, okay, well, what did that mean? You poor. I said, well, I actually didn't know that. I had shoes. I actually didn't know that, you know. I said, thank you for telling me that, but that will not define who Donnie Parker will turn out to be, you know.
That's good.
God worked that out, you know. That was
Good. Awesome.
Well, I think there was two major things I can think of that kind of helped push me and obstacles, you know, I overcame. One of the first thing was I've been blessed, and I can definitely say that now, growing up Christian. I was always somebody, even though I was more introverted, I always had a lot of friends. And most of my friends in my neighborhood weren't saved or anything, but they loved being around me, loved hanging, things like that. I used to think that was like a bad thing. Like, oh, Jeff ain't gonna curse, you know, that type of stuff. But it really made me help, and I'm going back to the decisions, it made me help good decisions, because I had two fears, fear of God, and again, fear of Dr. Chapman. So, of course, I made, you know, dumb mistakes growing up, but it was always really a foundation in me, being raised Christian, that I wasn't gonna do certain things. It wasn't gonna be, I was gonna get close to that edge, but I wasn't gonna jump. You know what I mean? I might put my foot in that water, but, you know, there was a barrier there, and I call it a hedge of protection that was over me because I grew up saved, I grew up a Christian, I had that background where I used to think it was something holding me back from experiencing life to its fullest. And that was my mindset growing up for a long time. Like, man, I can't, that looks so fun over there, you know, I want to do it, but, you know, and friends always saying, Jeff, you're right. I personally never thought I was raised strict, but everybody else did because I was raised Christian. And people associate Christian with strictness and rules and regulations. I saw that was just how I grew up. Whether it was the music I was listening to, things of that nature, it was just, hey, this is what it is. There were certain points, though, I did think like, man, I'm missing out on that right now because I'm Christian saved, type of thing. But, of course, now growing up, it helped me make good decisions. And one of the biggest things I would definitely want to pass down to the next generation is just be careful who you're around, because whoever you're around is really going to shape you. That's friends, that's, you know, loved ones, that's family, that's everything. And I was always particular about who I was around. That came from that Christian background of making good decisions, you know. And so that was one of the biggest things that shaped me, was I was very careful who I hung around. Didn't mean I always hung around the right person, but I knew how to gauge it and how far to push that pedal and who to be with, you know, be around. I would say the other thing that shaped me was church. Not only growing up, but working in a church. That shaped me more than any educational classes I ever took, because it was hands-on, trial and error, failures and success. You know, we had to deal with a lot, you know, as a ministry, dealing with people, you know, that might see you grow up and seeing you, who you dealt with, and making a transition from there, you know, and having to make tough decisions as a leader with people that you love growing up. But ultimately it made you who you are. You know, you had to make those tough decisions. You had to do certain things that wasn't popular amongst the group. But this church and managing all different personalities that come with the church and making those right decisions and making some wrong decisions really helped mold me with life and how to do the best with life. And I think those are the two major things, was growing up Christian and running a ministry really helped shape and mold me with all the obstacles that come with that.
That's very good. All right, Jesse?
I think I was very blessed, you know. I praise God for the way I was raised with my parents, you know. I had my dad and I had my father. I had my father and my mother. So I really praise God for that. That was a great blessing in my life. And, you know, we already talked about it a little bit. If it was going to be a hardship, it was going to be that I grew up in a predominantly white area. You know, there were places that I couldn't go growing up. I wanted to go to the pool with my friends, but I couldn't go to those pools because those pools were for only white people, you know. So there was stuff that I had to experience as a kid that when I talked to other black people when I got in college, they were like, I never experienced that. But I was like, well, I did. You know, that was my upbringing, you know. And so I would say that would be a hardship, but it also helped me. It made me stronger. You know, like my dad said earlier, you know, I was a student body president from like middle school all the way through high school, you know, and the odds were definitely stacked against me, but I was raised to love everybody, you know, and I didn't, you know, I was raised to love everybody. So I think I took that with me, and it made me a stronger person. It made me able to work in the working world, you know, not being an entrepreneur starting out, but working for a company. You know, I would say a hardship that I've learned along the way would be to be more transparent. I think that's something I didn't do because I was always trying to protect myself from white people, that I didn't know I could be transparent in certain situations, or I didn't do that. Companies don't really teach you that, but I mean, if you want to get a good mentor or something like that, that's not already assigned to you, but find a good mentor, you have to be transparent. You know, you got to be open, let people know what you're thinking, be a little vulnerable, you know, and that's scary. I think that's scary for men sometimes, is to be vulnerable. But if you can do that, if you can let down, you know, the gate or whatever, just to let people know really what's going on with you, I think that'll help you if you find the right mentor. Now, I heard this already, but you can't just let anybody in, right? You got to be wise about who you speak to and learn from. Like Wesley was talking about earlier, he had it sounds like a really great mentor, somebody who realized the times, but also gave him opportunities. And the same thing with me, I'm learning that. You know, that's not something that I knew about, but I'm learning that. So I would say that would be a hardship that's going to make me stronger, and I'm going to grow from that. And, yep.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna get ready to wrap this up. Let's see here. What surprised you the most about being a father?
Mine's real quick, okay? I know this is gonna sound so elementary, but looking at a baby and realizing that this baby is totally dependent upon you, that it will not survive without you taking care of it. So as my dad was saying, you know, I had to leave school because I was born and my brother was coming. It makes you kind of realize, you know, that your desires and your dreams, or whatever the case may be, may have to be shifted for a minute to handle your personal responsibility. And that was like an eye opener for me. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I would jump on that to say what surprised me the most was how absorbent kids are. They listen to they hang on every word that you say, you know. And if you say something you shouldn't be saying, they're gonna say it, you know. And you know, if you do something, they're gonna do it. I remember when we were in Campbell, California, and I was an auditor, and I was on the road a lot, traveling all the time. About 40%, you know. And Jesse was what, 6 months, 8 months? He might have been 8 months. I don't think he was. He was crawling. And he would see me get that suitcase out. And he'd crawl into that suitcase and look at me. And that's when I realized these kids are watching everything that I do. You know, my son's watching everything I do. And it actually made me move back to the East Coast to get a job where I wasn't traveling as much because it just hurt me. to see my son want to spend time with me, and I knew that my job required me to go to work. You know, it required me to get on the road. So after seeing that, that really changed me. You know, it made me change my job options at the time. So.
Anyone else? Okay. Alrighty. In your opinion, how is it important to be available, physically present with your wife and children? Is it important, and how important is it to be available and physically present to your wife and children?
It's very important to be there. That's paramount again, you know. Your kids, they're just, raising kids, they're just like a sponge, as Jesse said. And whatever goes into that sponge, they will absorb it all. Whether you're cussing, fussing, or whatever in your family, they're going to get a piece of it. And the greatest thing about it is when God steps into a person's life like he did mine. Now, I wasn't saved all the time, you know. I guess to be honest with you, I had joined church, but I was playing church. I wasn't actually converted to God, to love Jesus until I was about 35, 34, because I'm an alcoholic. I'm a saved alcoholic. But all these changes had to occur in my life to bring me to the point to where I am now and understand how great God is, you know. He can change, if he can change someone like me, I just want this audience to know he can change you to love your parents, if you're having issues with a child like I do at times, you know, he still loves you. You know, that's it.
That's awesome.
I agree with Mr. Parker over there. It is, if I had to rank it 1 to 10, I'd have to say a 10. It's great to be involved with your wife. If I hope she ain't listening now, but it's a lot of times I don't want to go shopping and stay out there with my wife trying on shoes all day long. But I know it's important for me to put aside things sometime and go with her, be with her, even though I don't want to be with her. That's important to her.
Yeah.
It's great to be with the kids when they're involved. When this young man was in school, I tried to be involved with him. When he was playing sports, when he put on that uniform, I tried to be there. Not only with him, but with all the other 3 too. When Carlin and Leslie, if they was on a debate team, I was there with them. When Leslie was pushing to be the #1 in her class, I was there pushing her too. I might not want to be there, but I was pushing her. If you're involved with them and their goals, they're going to be successful. If you're not, they might fall short. A lot of them do fall short because you're not involved with them. So as I said to start with, if I was ranking them 1 to 10, 10 is my number.
That's good. Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's uber important to spend time with your family. They're going to learn everything from you. You know, I think I've done some Bible studies in the past about this topic, and you know, for those guys who may have seen their fathers physically abuse their wives at the time, you know, that's a generational curse. We talk about generational blessings, but there's also curses that can be passed down. So it's really important to treat your wife with the utmost love. You notice how I didn't say respect, but with the utmost love, because the Bible talks about how the women need to be loved. They need to be respected as well, but they need to be loved first. And you need to show that to them, because if you have a daughter, that daughter's not going to know how to love unless they see that love. If you have a son, he's not going to know how to love a woman unless he sees you love a woman. You know, so that's what I've learned, even from discussions with Shannon, talking about Dr. Chapman and First Lady and how they were raised, how Shannon was raised. And, you know, when me and Shannon got married, you know, Shannon wasn't used to no heightened disagreement.
Right.
Speaking loud and stuff like that. She was like, oh, they would argue behind closed doors and then they would come out. And I was like, oh, I didn't have that experience. I said, but that's a blessing that y'all did that, you know. I said, I can learn something from that, you know. I can take something from that, you know. So, but you learn along the way. So, but just make sure that you treat that woman with the utmost love and respect is very important, I think, because they're going to learn from that. And even if they don't, in their minds, think they want to do what you did, later on in life, they're going to do what you did. Because it all comes back. It all comes full circle.
Yeah, it's good. So can any of you all speak to the person who may not have had a really great father in their lives, and any encouragement, or, you know, a young man who may not have that? What would you say, any encouragement if someone may have missed part of that experience of a great father? How can they still be a great leader and father at home? What would you say they could consider to take from you all and glean and be better men, and even women who may have missed a part of that as a part of their upbringing? Anything that you can encourage them in so they can have some encouragement here today on Father's Day?
I believe, you know, the gospel of Jesus Christ covers a great deal of that. And if a person was not raised in a home with a father or with an abusive father, one of the things that will cause is them to look at their heavenly father wrong. And so as an earthly father and an earthly man, the part of the responsibility is to help for a person that has been in those conditions, to help them see it differently. And that means by sometimes, as Jeff was growing up, he had friends, because he said always had a lot of friends come around the house. But for me to show them, not so much from a pastor perspective, just from a man and a married man or a husband, whatever the case may be, from that perspective. So that's why he always said I was cool, because I got out there and I was one of the guys to a certain extent. And it made them, you know, mellow out. It made them look at this thing differently. And just maybe, it changed their minds and how they looked at a father and how they looked at our relationship. And maybe that changed some things in their life. And I think, you know, going back to the gospel part, is that, you know, when we get saved, Jesus said he is the heavenly Father, and that he wants to protect us, and he desires to help us. He says, I know the plans I have towards you. See, the Lord of hosts plans to prosper you and to bless you and to give you a great future and a great hope. So I think, you know, just by us being examples in our life can help somebody that did not have that in their home.
It's really good.
Yeah, I think, and that's so important that he said that, because I was going to say having some sort of mentor in your life or an example. Dr. Chapman was an example to a lot of my friends, whether he knew it or not. Even to this day, they'll still kind of be like, man, I watch your dad messages on Facebook or whatever. Like, I see how he flows, how you look at his Instagram, it's nothing but him and his wife and my mom, you know, just loving on each other and things like that. So there's really been a great example for others to see. And so I would say having either an example or a mentor to help you, a father figure to help you in your journey. And one thing I really encourage is not so much, or used to be so much popular, but now it is, because you're in the mental health field, go to therapy. If it's something that's really, you know, damaging you, and it's something you need to deal with, I encourage, go to therapy. Go to a psychologist, help deal with these issues, see what you can do to really approach them and really take them on head on. I know so many friends of mine who ignore the issue, and I see it in them everyday life, but they're trying to cover it with doing different things. But I know they need that example, they need help in this area, because it is a void, it's a thorn in their flesh, if you will, that they just haven't never addressed. I think if they address it, it will help them overcome it. So I'm a very high component. I really encourage go to see a therapist, see a psychologist to help you get through whatever that void is of not having that father or a good father in your household. So example, mentor, and therapy to me will help shape that person who's dealing with those issues.
Love it.
I think Jay is spot on. Everything he said is spot on. And the only thing that I would add to that is peer accountability as well. So, you know, you have other brothers who have kids as well. You know, they're learning along the way. Why don't you do some stuff with them? Maybe you go on a camping trip with them or go fishing with them or something like that with their kids. And you'll learn things and you'll pick things up, you know. And you'll actually learn what you're strong in that you didn't even know you were strong in, you know. So that's all I got to say. I think Jay really hit it spot on.
Grandpa?
Well, I go a little bit deeper than what they just said, and all that was good. But sometimes some of those kids out there that don't have a father, you got to be a father to them. You might want to bring some of them in to your family and be that father. I know during my time as I was a young man, I bought several in. I bought, most of y'all know her as Clara. I call her Busy Bee. She's one that I raised from about 8 years up till she was grown, along with her sister Cordell. Brought them in and just kept them and raised them just like they was mine. My second wife, 2 come along with her, raised those 2 just like they were mine. There was no difference than him. They was all my kids. I didn't father them, but they were my kids. And that's how I just look at it. And you got to be just like these young men. You got to be a mentor to some of them that you don't bring in. I have young men, but they're not young men now, that came along with me as I was working, that I helped to bring along. They're becoming at the retirement age, but before they retire, they will call me on certain situations, financial situations. What will I do in this? How should I handle this? I told Jack, I said, Lord, I didn't know I was so popular with the companies I was coming up. But those people still respect me. Not just black people, white too. I got a call from a white guy last week. Mr. Chapman, I'm thinking about retiring. Here's my plan. Now you tell me what you think. Should I go with it or should I not? What should I do with my money? Should I get all my money at one time or should I take it on as I live? All those different types of questions. I influence somebody, but I don't know. Maybe it was the way I treated them as I was coming along. I didn't know it, but I always try to treat everybody right.
That's good.
I think that goes a long way. Yeah.
Awesome.
I would just love to add that our society is at a terrible place right now. I'm not going to paint the picture pretty. 62% of the families that women that have kids now do not have a father in their home. So I can say to that mother, reach out for the nearest, what Jeff was talking about, reach out for the nearest pastor or the person that could most definitely get Jesus in your life. Then things will change. I don't want to make it sound like a bad note, but that's where we are in our society. So reach out. Church is a great place to start. And don't listen to what all your friends tell you about Father. He's no good. You can still find you a great man.
Love it.
That's so real because I have people come up to me all the time in this church and say, man, thank you for sharing your dad with me. Like, because y'all like, yeah, you all my brothers. I'm like, I don't mind it at all because his influence on so many men who have that void and that didn't have that influence is great. Even these are grown men. I'm talking about 40, 50, even older than him. Like he has that influence on them as a spiritual father and a mentor, and it's really helping their growth. And I think that trickles down to all the men in this ministry to be a mentor to somebody or influence on somebody because he did that at home. It's instilled in him, and now he instills it in this church as well. And the men here at Raleigh North Christian Center love him to death. You know, and they lean on him. They're like, you know, they'll say, "Pastor, you really my dad." You know, 'cause like he gets that all the time because he and I commend Grandpa Wesley because he did that with him. So it just trickles down. And like Mr. Parker said, going to church, especially here at Raleigh North Christian Center, you're gonna get that father figure, especially with Dr. Chapman.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We are so honored. Give yourselves a hand. I think we appreciate you.
Job well done, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, we appreciate you sharing your heart, you know, being so authentic, encouraging our audience, and taking the time to see that person, young, old. I love that we have a multi-generational panelist here today. We're so honored, but really this is something I know that has been part of our heart to really highlight the generational wisdom, all the things that you've navigated as men, as fathers, as leaders. We honor you, and we honor all of our fathers in our community and at large. We're grateful for your leadership. We're grateful for your manhood, and we want to help continue to equip you to lead yourself, to lead at home, to be humble, to grow. That's part of why our mission here at Raleigh North Christian Center is come, grow, and lead. That growth space is where we all want to be so that we can lead well, we can serve well, we can listen, and we can learn, and we can be better for it. So we're so honored to wish you a happy Father's Day today. We pray that you feel loved. We pray that you feel encouraged. And if you need any way of community or connection, Raleigh North Christian Center is definitely here. Again, I want to thank our panelists. We're so grateful for you. Wesley Chapman, Dr. Jeffrey Chapman, Reverend Jesse Parker, Jeff Chapman Jr., and Jesse Parker. We are so grateful for you all. Have a wonderful day and happy Father's Day.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as I enjoyed this podcast. It was great for me just to be able to sit there and listen to some of the things that my father had to say, as well as my father-in-law and his father, things that I was learning for the first time that I had never heard before. I also appreciate my brother-in-law being there, as he was probably like me, had seen things that and heard things from them that we had never heard before. But the blessing is everyone was listening to the wisdom of all of us, getting a chance to hear, you know, what it takes to be a father, about what it takes to be a father. And it takes a willing heart. It takes someone who's not just willing to make babies, but they're also willing to love the women that they're with and love the children that they have. And not only love, but also make room for them. So I just pray, guys, that you get blessed out of this message. You take this and apply it to your lives. And remember, we are back on our flow of doing a podcast a week. I've been away for a while, but I am now back and looking forward to the many things that we're going to get into. Speaking of that, I wanted to ask you guys, if you have any questions, if there's anything that's really been on your mind, something that you had a hurdle about, send those questions to me on my social media accounts, like in the inbox or a DM, and let's discuss it a little bit. And you never know, it may make it into our podcast order, and we'll talk about it. So look forward to hearing from you from there as well. If you have questions, see the link to my email and social medias. If you want to get more detail on upcoming series or a peek into the next week, see my Men's Call page. Please like and share with other men. And again, thanks for joining Men's Call Podcast, where we gain insight to our calling by God and take action that will change our world for the better.